If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel, as well as follow me and subscribe to me on all my other social media platforms. What's up, Thrashers, and welcome back once again to the Thrash Maniac 99 YouTube channel, and I am back with another episode of Under the Radar for you guys. Yeah, my voice still not all the way back. It's kind of gotten a bit worse, but soldiering on for you guys who watch these videos. And yeah, for this week's Under the Radar, I'm taking a look at 4 albums that came out on the weekend of March 24th. And these are going to be really cool to talk about. So kicking things off for my first album I'm talking about the latest studio offering from a Norwegian black metal project called Mork with Dypet. So yeah, I got curious to check this one out because it's on Peaceville Records, one of the big metal labels out there. And yeah, it's black metal, and like I said, I am very picky about black metal. But this right here is some pretty unique stuff. Like, when I looked up this project, like, the big artist that it was compared to was Darkthrone, so I was thinking, we might get some, like, old-school Darkthrone feels. You do, but then again, you kind of don't. It feels kind of like a hodgepodge of classic Darkthrone with a little bit of the modern Darkthrone sound, but there's also quite a bit of, like, late 80s Bathory on here, a little bit of like modern Satyricon, and there's even at times a bit of a Motorhead sleaziness to it. I wouldn't call this necessarily black and roll because there are some really fast parts on here, but it's got a lot of groove, a little bit of a doom atmosphere here at times. But yeah, this album just has some really cool tremolos that show up here and there, but it's mostly about groovy, doomy, marching rhythms and riffs. The only real complaint that I do have about this album is that whenever it gets into those blast beats, the snare does get a little bit lost in the mix, whereas whenever it's slow, the snare is right up front. But whenever it gets into those fast blast beats, the snare does get lost a little bit. But other than that, the rest of the mix was pretty well balanced for a raw, lo-fi sounding album. So overall, I enjoyed this one for what it was. I give it an 8 out of 10. It's some pretty solid black metal right here that isn't the stereotypical black metal style. It's more slower, it's groovier, but does have plenty of fast moments to keep fans of the fast black metal very happy. But now moving on to the next album on the list, and that is Hanging Garden with The Garden. So yeah, this one I was curious about because, again, pretty much all these bands I've never heard of. But with Hanging Garden, I looked up their Metal Archives page, and I saw they were compared to bands like Swallow the Sun, maybe a little bit of Catatonia. But I also, whenever I was listening to this album, like, this is like Gothic melodic death doom. Like, it's a hybrid of melodeath, doom, and Gothic metal. Like, it's pretty much melodic death doom, but with a gothy dreariness on top. So it does feel like a little bit of like Swallow the Sun and early Catatonia, mixed with like a little bit of modern Paradise Lost and My Dying Bride, almost taking some of the best that Peaceville ever had back in the 90s and mashing it with modern bands like Swallow the Sun, and creates something that is so somber, so dark, but yet there are some uplifting melodies here and there on this album, but with darker, more sorrowful lyrics. And there are occasional electronics on this album, which is kind of a problem I have with the album, is that there is one track that's like a little over 2 minutes and it's all electronic. I thought this album could have lived without that track, and I think it would have made the album flow a little bit better. But other than that, this was some really good stuff right here. 8.5 out of 10 for this album. I enjoyed it for what it was. Dark, somber. Like I said, if you are a fan of Swallow the Sun, early Catatonia, My Dying Bride, and latter era Paradise Lost, I think you're going to dig this album for sure. And now on to the third album, the penultimate album of the list, and that is Catacomb with When the Stars Are Right. So I got curious to check this one out. This is a French death metal band, and how I got interested in checking this out is because looking at their metal archives, the #1 band they were compared to, Time Ghoul, which I am a big fan of Time Ghoul. And this album kind of caught me off guard a little bit. Like, there's a lot of like thrashy moments on here, but it also has a little bit of a black metal vibe here and there on certain parts on certain tracks. But it's got a lot of great chug, groove to it. This almost feels like a hodgepodge of Time Ghoul, maybe a little Blood Incantation, old school Morbid Angel, and at times some of the dissonant atonal riffs of a band like Immolation, or maybe even Ulcerate a little bit. And they also do a really cool cover of Chapel of Ghouls by Morbid Angel as the closer on this album. And this is actually their debut, but yet they've been around on and off since the early 90s. Just never got anything out until this year in terms of studio full-length output. But the only complaint I could have about this album, it might be a bit too busy at times because there's so much going on with this album. But it's not a terrible thing. It's just sometimes they could slow some sections down to like really build up tension and atmosphere. But other than that, this was another really good album for this week. I give this one also an 8.5 out of 10. Definitely check it out if you are a fan of bands like Time Ghoul, Blood Incantation, Morbid Angel, Ulcerate, maybe Immolation, or even Demigod. I think you'll dig this. But now on to the final album talking about for this week, and that is Angerot with The Profound Recreant. So yeah, this I got curious to check out thanks to Thralls of Metal. Necrotic Nick covered this one in a review recently. And yeah, this is a South Dakota death metal band, and well, these guys might be the bloodbath of the Great Plains of the United States, because these guys pretty much play death metal very much akin to Swedish death metal, primarily Entombed and especially Bloodbath. But I also get a little bit of like the grooves from a band like Gatecreeper, but when it gets really thrashy and like really into the triplet sections, makes me think of Blood Red Throne. It's kind of like a hybrid of some of the best European death metal with a little bit more groove and a little more chug and a little bit more speed. There are times where it can get a little blackened with some of the riff work, but yeah, this album, it just sounds sinister, it sounds evil. The HM2 tone is on full display, which I am a big slut for. And also, clever use of symphonic elements at certain times to kind of enhance the sinister nature of a lot of these songs. And plus, a lot of big guest stars like Sammy Duet from Goatwhore and Acid Bath, Andy LaRock from King Diamond, Steve Tucker from Morbid Angel, and Simon Olsen from Beast, all doing guest stuff on this album. The production, pretty well balanced for the most part. And other than that, I don't really have anything to complain about. This is a short, sweet, and to the fucking point. Granted, the opening and closing tracks were kind of strange because they were like German vocals or German lyrics. But aside from that, this is some great shit right here. 9 out of 10 for this album. Like, holy shit. This is some really damn good death metal from the Great Plains. But anyways, that does it for this week's Under the Radar. Like I said, albums are in the description box below for you guys to check out. Which of these 4 albums was your favorite? Let me know in the comments. And until next time, you keep your horns high and your dreams wet.